My name is Katie Coleman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Energy and Green Building Program Coordinator. I am one of your hosts for tonight's evening. I cannot express how thrilled I am to see all of your smiling faces here at the Green Building Slam. It's a heartwarming sight to have both familiar faces and new friends joining us tonight. Speaking of new and old friends, we have an amazing lineup of speakers tonight. I have no doubt that their presentations will both enlighten and inspire us. These folks are the rock stars of sustainability, and we're lucky to have them share their wisdom and insights with us. Of course, it's not just about the speakers or us up here on the stage. It's about all of you, the incredible energy and passion that the green building community brings to the table. You folks are the driving force behind real change. You're the architects, builders, designers, consultants, engineers, etc., of a better world, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Yeah, talk about driving force. I want to introduce you to the Energy and Green Building team. These individuals are the heartbeat of the Commercial Community Energy Challenge, which is the flagship program of the Energy and Green Building team. Their expertise and dedication have been instrumental in assisting small businesses and building owners to achieve their energy efficiency goals. Rose, her energy and determination is unmatched. She's the glue that holds us together, and she's also the MVP of tonight. Put together a slide in 4 hours. Badass. Emily is the world's best manager, and she is the smartest, most compassionate person that I know. And then Orion, our energy efficiency specialist and our go-to person for all things building science and energy use calculations. And then finally, last but not least, Elodie, who is my partner in crime. But that's not all. Tonight's Energy and Green Building Slam marks the beginning of something even bigger, the Bellingham Climate Action Week. It's a week-long event filled with inspiring activities and initiatives aimed at tackling climate change head-on. And the Green Building Slam is just the start. We encourage you to attend other events throughout the week. From beach walks to informative solar workshops, there are countless opportunities for you to get involved and make a difference. Together, we can amplify our impact and create a more sustainable future for our community and our planet. As we get ready to kick off this event, remember that we're all in this together. Every little step, every idea, every conversation we have today will ripple out and make a difference. Sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a shared journey that we all are embarking on. So let's make this Green Building Slam not just a gathering, but a celebration of our shared commitment for a better, greener world. Enjoy the event, soak up the knowledge, and let's keep inspiring change in our communities. And before I pass the mic to Elodie, I wanted to once more thank you all for being here, and let's have a blast.
All right, thank you, Katie. Hello, everyone. My name is Elodie Saraskis. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Energy and Green Building Program Assistant and your second host for this evening. So now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Christine Baldwin, our project architect at HKP, joining us to discuss the innovative Mount Vernon Library Commons project. Let's give it up for Christine. Woo! There's a clicker here. If you want, or you can just advance the slides.
Thank you, Elodie. I'm very excited to be here this evening to be able to talk about the Library Commons project in Mount Vernon, so just a couple miles here south on Interstate 5, and really pushing the needle on decarbonizing concrete. We wanted to share this image kind of as the first visual slide. This is taken from the southeast corner of the building, but what it helps illustrate is that this building is a community center and a library on the first floor with 3 levels of structured parking above it. So essentially, it is a parking garage structure with community, high-value community spaces on the first floor. You could see here on this slide as well that we have the entrance to the parking garage kind of in this area, and a couple sustainable features are visible as well. Not going to talk about all of these. We're more than happy to come back and describe some more of the sustainable features in this project, but there's a lot of really exciting things beyond decarbonizing concrete on this project, and just to touch on a couple of those, we have a super low energy EUI, or energy usage intensity, on this project. Based off of our energy model, we calculated it to be 12, and for a little bit of context, a similar building, according to the 2018 Washington State Energy Code, would be a 48. So we are improving on that by 4 times. Couple other elements are the PV array, which actually, if I just jump back to the last slide here really quick, all of those kind of white rectangles you see on the left side of the image, that is a large PV array on the south of the building. And then also there is infrastructure for up to 200 EV charging stations on this project, about 76 of which will be installed at opening. So kind of thinking beyond decarbonizing concrete, but really thinking how can we move the needle in terms of reducing our reliance on fossil fuels for vehicles. So this building is a parking garage, like I noted. You can construct parking garages out of many different things, including steel or even mass timber, which we did look at the early stages of this project. But there's a couple limitations to those. Mostly steel, the limiting factor is the spans that you can achieve with steel versus a post-tension concrete system. And also with mass timber, this parking garage is considered an open parking garage, meaning that weather can get inside the parking garage. I mean, we limit it as best as we can, but mass timber would be exposed to the elements. And so for these reasons and a couple others, we settled on a concrete structure. The beginning of the project, we then did a whole building life cycle analysis to try and understand all of the components of this project. And what this pie chart does here is represents like the main components of the building. And you can see that 71%, that's what like the biggest green area of the pie chart is concrete, meaning that the vast majority of this building is concrete and concrete structure. So when thinking about opportunities to improve the sustainability of this project, it was pretty obvious that the best target to do so would be to look at the concrete and improve the concrete itself. Image on the right is the mat foundation for this building, which is essentially like a really, really thick footing that supports the majority of the project, and it's 6 feet deep. So those little green things that you see within the wood formwork, those are men standing there prepping that for rebar. So it's really, really deep. I was gonna ask, before I actually got to this slide, how many people knew that concrete and cement are not synonymous? And I'm willing to admit that when I was younger, before I went to school to become an architect and became an architect, I used those terms interchangeably, and they are not the same. Cement is one of the 4 main ingredients in concrete, the other 3 being fine aggregate, coarse aggregate, and water. There's other things you can mix in there, like color, admixtures, all sorts of things. But cement is one of the most critical because it has a very, very high CO2 emissions to it. So when you think about concrete and improving it, the best target to improve it is to look at the cement. So as part of this project, we investigated supplemental cementitious materials, which I'm going to just call SCMs from this point moving forward. And some really, really typical ones that you might have heard of and are more commonplace are fly ash and slag. Those are pretty industry standards, but they tend to kind of come and go because they're byproducts of other fabrication processes. So they're not always available, and they might be available in certain parts of the US more so than others. There's also other alternatives out there, such as calcium carbonate as well, that kind of continue to be studied and developed. So for this project, as we were thinking like, okay, how can we improve the concrete? What can we do about the cement? We looked at increasing the SCM value by introducing more fly ash and slag, or you can also increase the cure time of concrete, essentially like allowing it to come up to strength over a longer period of time. But both of those, like every way you kind of look to manipulate concrete is always going to have some sort of impact to it. If you look to increase cure time, that means that a contractor can't load the concrete as soon as they might want to in terms of the project schedule. So that's one limitation you have to think about. And also things like fly ash and slag impact the color of the concrete. And like I said, they're not always available. You can't always count on them. So when we looked at this project, we ended up with a lot of different concrete mixes based off of the different kinds of structural strength and requirements of the different components of the building. So for this building, given that it's a parking structure, we have PT, or like the floors of the parking garage. We have columns, we have beams, we have slab on grade. There's all these different kinds of concrete that require different things structurally. They require different strengths and different slumps, meaning like how workable are they for the contractor. I would say typically it's pretty common to try and reduce the number of mix designs you have on a project, just because it gets to be more complicated for the contractor to manage. But in working on this project, we involved a lot of different industry experts, including concrete mix designers, and tried to engage a lot of people, and ended up with several mix designs. This image actually here is from the bid documents, right here, of all the different mix designs incorporated on the project, and trying to find the optimum solution for each of them in terms of like how far could we push swapping out the cement, which is typically Portland cement, with a supplemental cementitious material. How far could we go? In some areas, we could push that needle to 40%. So that means that 40% of Portland cement was replaced with an alternative supplemental cementitious material like slag or fly ash. This is like a high-level overview here, taking into account the volume of the concrete on the project and how that informs the global warming potential. So various aspects of the concrete, there was just more volume of it, meaning we could make the most improvement on global warming potential with those areas of concrete. So during design, when we analyzed this, we felt like we could pretty comfortably hit a 31% reduction in global warming potential strictly by changing the concrete. That's not taking into account any other moves that we made with other materials trying to improve from a sustainability aspect. We just checked the numbers with our contractor yesterday or the other day, and right now we're actually at a 41% reduction in global warming potential, basically exceeding what our goal was going into the project and actually exceeding what we kind of had in the contract for the project. 41% doesn't really mean a lot. It's really hard to quantify, so my colleague tried to kind of put this into numbers that we can maybe all understand. So 41% reduction means 1,000, just over 1,000 metric tons less global warming potential than a typical similar building would have, which, as crazy as it sounds, is over 120,000 gallons of gasoline burned that we're saving strictly by making this change in the concrete. So when we think about the future of concrete, I think the question to be asked is, where else can we incorporate this kind of thinking and incorporation into the actual design of concrete mixes? And the reality is we can do it with pretty much every concrete that's on a project. And there's even opportunities to look at alternative aggregates, which is one of the other main components of concrete, to help improve and improve the, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess, make it less detrimental to the environment and improve the embodied carbon that's in our buildings. That is it.
Thank you, Christine. I can't wait till we can all go down to Mount Vernon and take a tour of the Mount Vernon Library Commons once it's finished. I don't know if any of you have ever driven by it recently, but it's under construction and the concrete is almost done. Our next speaker is a true trailblazer in the realm of clean energy, climate action, and social justice. Beth Dolio is not only a state representative serving in the Washington State Legislature, but she's also one of the foremost leaders in our state when it comes to advocating for positive change. Previously, she worked for Climate Solutions, and she is the chair of the Environmental Committee. Representative Beth Dolio is here with us to share her insights on clean energy, climate action, and embodied carbon. Please join me in welcoming Representative Dolio to the stage.
Use the clicker. So which one do I click? This one, that one. You click. All right. Hello, everyone. It's so great to see so many people here to talk about buildings. That is just so awesome. I have a very warm place for Whatcom County in my heart because I was the director at the inception of the Power Past Coal campaign. And as you might remember, this thin green line and how we talked about resistance and solutions. And that campaign, as you might remember, we partnered hand in hand with the tribal nations in the Pacific Northwest, and we created an amazing groundswell of grassroots, like, anger and comment on saying no and kicking coal export. All 7 facilities that were proposed here, we kicked them right out of town in all the communities in the Pacific Northwest. And a lot of that energy came from right here in Whatcom County. In fact, we were able to get 1 million comments to the Department of Ecology. 1 million comments. So that was really a lot of what galvanized the part of what we were talking about, the solutions part that we weren't able to really work on because we were so focused on resistance. And so when I started thinking about that problem, I was like, we need policy to drive, state policy to drive those solutions at scale, to turn us away from fossil fuels and towards a clean energy future. And so I ran for office, and I got elected, and now I serve in the state legislature, the 22nd Legislative District, which is in Thurston County, and it is also the ancestral home of the Squaxin Island, Nisqually, and Chehalis tribal nations. So I went into the legislature really wanting to work on climate, and so one of the first issues that I worked on was embodied carbon. How many people know what embodied carbon is? Okay, so a lot of people know what embodied carbon is. It's, from the beginning, anything that you use to build a building, from the beginning, the cradle to the grave. All of that, and the greenhouse gas emissions that are involved in that, is what embodied carbon is. Well, people thought it was kind of crazy when I dropped a bill on embodied carbon based on a bill that California had passed. Like, literally, they thought it was crazy. And I walked into my first stakeholder meeting. Really, it was the first stakeholder meeting I had done on a controversial topic. And this is what I walked into. Like, not these exact people, but they looked just like this. And, I didn't really know that much about embodied carbon. I just kind of thought, oh, this seems like something we really ought to be working on. It is 11% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. We should get busy to work on this. But the concrete executives, the timber executives, the steel executives, they actually flew in from Chicago, a few of them, to talk about this bill that I had just dropped. And I didn't know anything about it. So I will say that Kate Simonin, who is the director of the Carbon Leadership Forum, she was there, and she saved my bacon. She knew all about it. It's a great program at UW. And if you're interested in learning more about what's going on in embodied carbon, which is exactly what Christine was talking about, and she's doing a great job, we need architects like that driving these solutions and bringing down the global warming potential of concrete, steel, timber, the kinds of things that go and make the building materials that make our buildings. So that bill still hasn't passed, so please advocate for embodied carbon in the legislature. It's coming up. We're going to get it done this session, and that's just the starting point. There's so much more to do in that space. Now, we turn to 2019, and 2019 was this amazing year. This is a bill signing. We passed a suite of climate legislation. 100% clean electricity by 2045. We passed that in 2019. We addressed hydrofluorocarbons, a very potent greenhouse gas. And then we also passed a bill that I sponsored, the Clean Buildings Program. And this deals with buildings. Mine was 50,000 square feet. Of course, Representative Rammel had to come and one-up me and take it down to 20,000 square feet. But basically, it started the Clean Buildings Program, and it's really cool when you're a legislator and you pass a bill, and like you go to a website, and it's like there's this program, and there's like staff, and like you have to comply with something. So anyway, it requires buildings, large commercial buildings, to comply with an efficiency standard. It starts in 2026, that compliance period. And that applies to the largest buildings, and then over time it gets down to those 20,000 square feet that Rep. Rammel wrote a bill and passed a bill to expand the program. Really exciting. We are having a little bit of trouble with the statute, the way it's written, and as a legislator, you're always trying to tweak things, right? Things, you write a bill, you're not sure how it's going to work out. So we're going to be working on a bill this year to try and get that money flowing into folks who are working on building and efficiency, getting that money out the door a little bit more quickly to help you and building owners comply with this law, the Green Buildings Program. So now it's really kind of cool because we have really painted the policy, the systemic changes are in place in Washington State. And so now we're really in the implementation phase. We're like really at the solutions at scale, and we're trying to create them. And so we're Rep. Rammel again. Okay, Rep. Rammel, I'm giving him a lot of kudos because I'm in his district. And I know he's here, but he's got this great navigator bill. Like now it's like, okay, we need to get off gas, our homes need to be electric, and we can be a part of that. But you have to like think it's a lot of work to make it happen. But the cool thing is that we can actually engage with that and be a climate solutions ourselves in our homes in a much bigger way than we could have ever imagined, at least me working in the climate movement for all these years. But he's working on creating a really awesome navigator program so that there's a one-stop shop that the state has to let you know what your incentives are, what your rebates are, what a HVAC system is, heat pump water heater, an induction stove, how to actually make it happen. So really excited to see this bill move. We did get it across the House floor. We've got to get it through the Senate next year and make that happen so that you will have knowledge at your fingertips straight from the state. So I am also really nerding out right now about demand response because it's so cool that we can actually interact with the energy that we're using in our homes and make a difference in the clean energy projects that we need to build, which of course do create carbon emissions. And if we are actually like responding to when our peak need is, we can eliminate the need to actually create more projects, more wind, solar to supply us and to put the lights on. Let me just show you this. So PG&E serves Portland, 105-degree day, August 14th. They sent out a text at 5 p.m. to say, hey, we don't know if we're going to have enough energy for you all. Like, conserve. And look at that, 90 megawatts. I mean, that's amazing. That's just with a text from PG&E to their customers saying, please conserve. Just imagine what we could do if we had a system-wide program that really encouraged us and helped us interact with our own use of energy in our homes, when we use it and how we use it. So I'm going to take us back to the Power Past Coal campaign to wrap things up here. Longview, Washington also had a facility proposed there. We kicked them out of town, but it was the last one to go. I was absolutely honored to attend the ribbon cutting for a company called Divert. And Divert is taking, they're contracting with Safeway and Albertson to deal with food waste. Yet again, another greenhouse gas contributor. Food waste releases methane, it's a problem. They're contracting with these large food stores, food supermarkets, taking their unused waste and turning it into biogas and putting that into the gas pipeline, reducing the greenhouse gas emissions coming from gas. And this is right here in Longview, Washington, where we kicked out a coal export facility. Now we're creating jobs, we're creating solutions to our greenhouse gas, and we're really excited about it, at least I am. And so now we're onto solutions, and it's so exciting. I'm really excited to partner with all of you across the state to really move us into the clean energy future. So thank you so much.
Our next speaker is at the forefront of sustainable building practice and energy efficiency. Alex Hébert is a mechanical engineer who plays a pivotal role in the development and operation of the Zero Energy Emissions Building Learning Center at BCIT, all the way from Canada. Alex's commitment to advancing building science and his work in facilitating the adoption of sustainable construction standards are instrumental in driving our region towards a greener future. Today, we're fortunate to have Alex Hébert here with us to share his expertise and insights in the world of zero energy and zero emissions building. Let's give it up for Alex Hébert. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So my name is Alex. When I got an email from Elodie, I was quite excited, and I said, "What do you want me to talk about?" And she said, "Whatever you want, as long as you're passionate about it," which is really good news for me. Not so sure about whether it's good news for you or not, because I'm going to spend 10 minutes trying to convince you to be agents in charge of keeping the insulation discussion alive. And so where I come from, there's a big push for electrification, trying to deal with climate change by getting our cars to be electric, by having heating in our homes that is electric, and going electric all the way. And I'm having a hard time keeping everybody excited about insulation, which is also quite cool. Okay, so the first few slides are not really for you, but I'm going to present them anyway. I've tried this presentation in front of a crowd who I knew disagree with me, and I thought the only way to break the ice would be to tell them that I'm not completely against carbon. And I decided to share them with you because it helped me very much in my conversation, and from now on, this is part of all my presentations. So, carbon is louder? Okay, is that better? Okay. Is that still okay here? Because I move a lot, I think. Is it okay? Higher? Okay, so carbon is not necessarily a bad thing. Carbon is something that we teach our kids about using the periodic table. Carbon is what I exhaust and you exhaust when you breathe. Fun fact about carbon, and if you find that interesting, go and watch the End of Oil episode on Netflix. It's a series called Explained. We've been talking about, can you read at the back, greenhouse gas emissions for quite a while now. So we discover as humankind the effect of greenhouse gas and the idea that temperature can increase if you add more CO2 to the atmosphere before we actually struck oil. And so we struck oil. That said, there's a strong belief that First Nations struck oil way before we did it, but official date anyway is 1859. So 1856 we discovered the effects of greenhouse gases. 1859 we struck oil, and here we are today. I'll let you read the rest there, and we're still talking about it. And I think we have to get to a point where we move on. But it's possible to move on without saying that fossil fuels were all bad. So I have a few images that I like on this slide. Anyone knows what the horse is doing at the bottom left? Is that a stamp that you recognize? So that's the Pony Express. The Pony Express was a business that survived 1 year between 1860 and 1861. It was the fastest way to deliver mail from the East Coast to the West Coast of the US. You had horses every 10 miles waiting for the envelope, and you would do a tag relay until you get to the other end. 10 days later, you have your mail at your final destination. The reason I'm showing you this, this little stamp here is that if you think of innovation as a new idea that makes an older idea obsolete, in that sense, fossil fuels are amazing because we used to have lights in our home using humpback whales, oil from the whales to have oil in our lamps. And there's a general agreement in the scientific community that the reason the humpback whale did not go extinct and are actually coming back now is because we discovered fossil fuels. And kerosene became the main way of lighting our houses, and suddenly we were capable of doing what we need without having to kill all the whales. So I'm not saying that I'm against fossil fuels, but we know we have to move to something else. And in my neck of the wood, the discussion right now is along the lines of let's electrify everything. So this graph is not going to be easy for you to read at the back, but you see a y-axis that shows the amount of energy that is consumed by humans. And then the far right of the x-axis is showing today or the most recent data. And the yellow line is showing where the good energy starts if you care about climate change. So right now, most of what we use for energy is fossil fuel based. Oops. And so these are statistics for British Columbia. I would imagine they're not that different for Washington State. BC Hydro, which is our main utility, capable of producing fairly clean electricity, produces with the independent producer about 60,000 of gigawatt hour of electricity in a year. We consume 100,000 gigawatt hour a year of natural gas, and we burn 145,000 gigawatt hour a year of gasoline and diesel. And so if we tell BC Hydro today, let's electrify the cars, let's get away from natural gas for heating in my house, we will have to very quickly figure out how to produce way more clean electricity. And we're done damming our rivers in BC because the Peace River and the Columbia rivers have been fully dammed. So the question is, how do we get to producing so much clean electricity? Good news is that we are getting every 5 days enough energy from the sun to represent the entire amount of energy that is stored in all the fossil fuels we have in the ground. And if we could capture just 1/6,000 of Earth's available solar energy, we would do just fine. So, you know, we don't have to try right away, but we're not yet capable of capturing in an efficient manner all that sun energy. In Vancouver last week, there was a show that was getting everybody excited. It was called a Fully Charged Show. It was actually very good. It was well attended, a very good vibe. Everything was electric. I saw my first SUV bicycle, like it was a probably 2,000-pound bicycle that potentially keeps you safe, I suppose, but that requires a really big battery to get you to where you need to go. I'm hoping, and I don't know that it's easy, or I'm sure it's not easy, I don't know that it's possible, that we can get young people excited about thick walls the same way young people were excited about the electric scooter that was at the conference last week. So where I come from, when I was young, you were cool if you had a big engine under your hood. And so as a cool kid on the main street, you would park your car, pop up the hood, and your friends would gather around and be like, wow, you know? Is that a V6? Is that a V8? And I'm hoping we get together to a point where people brag about the thickness of their walls, okay? And it's happening, right? Oprah's doing it, Barack is doing it. I forget the name of this guy here. And if we can just find a way, it's a selfie problem. Try to take a selfie of yourself in the doorway of your thick wall house. It's actually that easy. So if we can fix the selfie piece, I think we'll be fine. Okay, I'm very short with time here. Oh, I'm missing a slide. I'm missing my best slide. Of course. So I have a slide where I downloaded all the data for the house where I live. And so in the house where I live, I have 9,000 watts of baseboard heaters installed. If I was to renovate my house the way we renovated this cabin in August, I would need one baseboard heater. So I would go from 9,000 watts to 1,000 watts. That means that I'm going from 5,000 kilowatt hour a year of electricity to 1,000 kilowatt hour a year of electricity. And if I decide to take that baseboard heater out and replace it with a heat pump, and my heat pump performs at a COP of 3, I can go down to 300 kilowatt hour per year. So I live in a very, very small house in a mild climate. But in general, the idea is reduce first, reduce first, reduce first, electrify second. Thank you.
Moving on to our next speaker, who is a true inspiration in the realm of sustainable energy, water, and wastewater systems. Jeff Giffen is the regional manager for Corix Utilities, a company that specializes in multi-platform utilities and is dedicated to advancing sustainable solutions. Jeff is at the forefront of an exciting project as he leads the development of the Bellingham Waterfront District Energy Utility. Jeff is a certified energy manager and possesses a master's in clean energy engineering from the University of British Columbia. Jeff Giffen, everybody.
Great to see you all. Jeff Giffen, I'm regional manager for Corix Utilities here in Bellingham, Washington, and I'm going to talk to you about district energy and what we're doing down at the Port of Bellingham. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, there, no, not that. That was not what I was planning on putting up.
You got to put it this way.
Oh, you pointed that way. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go.
Okay, great. So, first fail. All right. But before I talk about what's going on at the Bellingham Waterfront, I wanted to ask everybody if anyone knows about Bellingham's sister city, Vasa, Finland. Yeah, we got one person. All right. Great. Well, I didn't know about it either until I started doing some research, getting ready for this presentation. And I think this is kind of a interesting segue because Vasa, Finland, has a lot of similarities to Bellingham. I mean, obviously they're a sister city, but also they're, West Coast for their West Coast. They're a West Coast port city. They're a university town. They're kind of going through a post-industrial transition and transformation, trying to figure out, find their feet a little bit. They've got a pretty strong clean tech sector, similar to Bellingham. And they've got some very strong climate action commitments, and they're really, very, very, aggressive on their sustainability aspects. Population, pretty similar to Bellingham. GDP, pretty similar. Life expectancy. And contrary to what I assumed, they actually mostly drive cars everywhere. So they've got a pretty similar situation in many ways to Bellingham, very similar to us. Oh, I keep pointing the wrong direction. Oh my goodness, now I did it. Now I did it. Okay, what's going on here? I okay.
Keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
You want to press that button.
No, okay. Here's where I want to be. Okay, great. Thank you, Katie. Okay. All right. But there are quite a lot of differences too, and the main difference that I can figure is that they have a lot of saunas. I couldn't find the exact number for Vasa, but Finland in general has 0.62 saunas per person. And I know of at least 10 saunas in Bellingham. Does anybody else know of any? Because, yeah, all right, great. We're going to your house afterwards, okay? I love a sauna, and we do not have enough saunas here compared to Finland. So the other interesting difference is their carbon neutrality targets. Vasa is actually targeting 100% carbon neutrality by 2035, and that's not just the city of Vasa. That's actually the entire country of Finland is targeting that. So they're really out there, very aggressive, really cool stuff what they're doing. Another big difference about Vasa and Bellingham is that how they heat and cool their buildings. So 90% of the buildings in the town of Vasa are heated by a district energy heating network, and you can kind of see the map down below there. And so, do people here know what district energy is? Okay, all right, we got a couple. For those of you that do not know, it's generally a network of pipes, of hot water or chilled water pipes that circulate around, and they connect to all these different energy sources and energy sinks. And it's kind of like having a big electric grid where you can plug in low carbon energy over here, and you can get, peaking and backup from over there. And so it's very, the best way I can equate it to is if it's big enough, it's like an electrical grid, but for thermal energy. There's a lot of neat resiliency and sustainability benefits that can come with that. So in Bellingham, we have less than 1% of our buildings connected to district energy. We're hopefully going to be like 2% sometime soon. We have about 0.5 miles of piping installed down at the port right now, and in the next, we're hoping 2 or 3 months, those should go live. So we'll actually be heating with those pipes. Woohoo! Thank you. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the presentation once I get after this. But they have 149 miles of piping installed, so you can really see it completely encompasses their entire city. They get their heat to heat this system primarily from waste heat sources. So they have a waste energy facility that produces electricity from their garbage, and they also collect waste heat off the back end and use that to heat the system. They also have a biomass gasification system that does it, and they have an old coal facility that they're in the process of decommissioning that currently feeds into that grid as well. Here in Bellingham, we use natural gas electricity. Our carbon emissions per capita, which, by the way, at 8 are extremely low compared to the national average. So we're doing really good, but it's not as good as what they're doing in Vasa And I'm not saying that it's district energy alone is why they have a lower carbon footprint, but I think it's a big part of it. So on to district energy in Bellingham. So what are we doing? This is a recent picture taken from the Bellingham waterfront. And what you can see here is we've got a 4-pipe heating and cooling system that we're installing. The plant is going to be built adjacent to Puget Sound Energy's EncoGen facility. If anyone has ever looked up on a cold day in Bellingham and wondered what that giant plume of heat of vapor going into the atmosphere is, that's the waste heat coming off of the EncoGen facility. So there's enough waste heat coming off that facility to heat like half of Bellingham. It's insane. There's 100 megawatts coming off on a general on any given day. So a lot of waste heat potential there. We're going to tap in and take a very small amount of it, but it is going to be one of the energy sources that we use to heat the system. The other energy sources that we're going to use is waste heat from the building's cooling systems that we're connecting to. Because we're a 4-pipe system, we got hot pipes and chilled water pipes, and we can recycle that heat within its own system. And then we also have a way that we can do air source heat pumping as well as sort of a backup to the backup. So that's what we're doing as far as the central energy plant. I keep aiming it the wrong way. These are the project enablers, and these are the people that have really helped to push this project along from the beginning. And I wanted to give a shout out to Sustainable Connections and to Martin Silch in particular. Yeah, Martin. And the people at Sustainable Connections, because they really helped to bring this project forward and to keep championing it when it looked like it was going to die many times. So they've been a big part of getting this going. The city of Bellingham obviously has been a part of it. Other partners are the Port of Bellingham, big champions on getting this project through. They've done the whole redevelopment and master plan for the port property down there, and low carbon district energy has been one of the sustainable benefits that they've been trying to work for the whole way through. Other partners include Harcourt Development. They're the master development down there, and they're the first 3 buildings we're connecting to. And then we also have Mercy Housing, the low-income housing development that's connecting to the system. And finally, we've got Puget Sound Energy that is graciously letting us take their waste heat for free. It actually makes them more efficient, so yeah. So this is what, do I only have a minute left? Oh my goodness, I better move. Okay, so this is what the, what's that? Yeah, minute 4, thank you, yeah. Okay, but there was technical issues. I think I should deserve more time. Yeah, oh. So this is what the project looks like from a development time horizon. We're currently designing the system in a modular and scalable way. The first phase is going to feed the first 3 buildings with Waterfront, Mercy, and then the hotel. And then as new buildings come online, we're going to add capacity, to the ultimate about 1.6 million square foot build out. This is what we're actually, a schematic of what we're installing in the plant. And it's worth spending a little bit of time on this because I think it's really cool. I'm an engineer, so I get off on this stuff. So the main thing I want to call your attention to is this heat recovery chiller in the middle right here. So this is a really slick magnetic bearing heat recovery chiller. The simultaneous heating and cooling COP on this chiller is upwards of 10. So it's way far beyond anything you can do with standard air source heat pumps or on a building level scale. And we've got the ability to take heat from our condenser water return line here, feed it into the return line of our hot water system. And we can also have these valves. We can switch over and we can take heat from PSE's cooling towers. And what's kind of neat about the way we're connecting to the PSE's cooling towers, we're actually pulling the water out of their basin of their cooling tower, which has 160,000 gallons of storage capacity. So we don't need PSE to be operating to be able to take waste heat out of there. It's basically a big thermal battery that we can use whenever we want and whenever we need to. We can also reject heat back into the cooling tower basin as sort of a backup to our fluid cooler systems when we need it. And finally, we have some hot water boilers down there. They're just natural gas fed that are really there for just resiliency, peaking and backup. And that's really, but in general, we're expecting like 70–80% of our energy to come from this heat recovery chiller. So to kind of wrap it up, we think we got a great site. The Bellingham waterfront there is ideally located. We've got a lot of waste heat opportunities down there. We've got industrial waste heat, sewer waste heat. We've got potential for ocean thermal. There's some abandoned coal mines that we've been talking to people about. There's a raw water system. There's opportunities for bioenergy and other kinds of really cool clean technology that could happen. And there's a lot of thermal load centers nearby. So I'm not saying it's going to happen now, but maybe someday in the future, it could look a little bit more like Vasa. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Monica Guevara, the Northwest Economics Inclusion Manager at Emerald Cities Collaborative. Monica manages the E-Contractor Academy and Minority Business Accelerator Program, which provides skill building, networking, technical training, and introductions to projects that involve new clean energy and construction technologies. Her dedication to economic empowerment and sustainable business practices makes her a valuable voice in our mission to build a more inclusive and environmentally conscious future. Please join me in welcoming Monica Guevara to the stage.
Gosh, so much power. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to do a little preaching to the choir first, and then we'll get into the solutions part of it. But essentially, as you see up on the slide, we have a little bit of some of our future climate reality if we don't change things soon, right? Wildfires and floods becoming more increasing, and health disparities and quality of air being detrimental to our health. And obviously we don't want these things to happen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some sexy and cool solution pieces, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the unsexy and uncool stuff, but it's important too. So when we talk about climate change and when we talk about who that impacts, it unfortunately has an outsized impact on those that have the least amount of options. So people of color, under-resourced individuals, not even to talk about, marginalized communities, and then the intersectionality of any of those components, just exacerbates the issue. So before we get into solutions, I'm going to take a pause for a moment and just talk a little bit about myself, because I'm a little bit of a ham, so bear with me. But I swear it'll all tie back in. So I originally worked in finance. I originally worked with small businesses. I worked on loans. I was the finance bro, right? So with that, we were living in Los Angeles. We had just had my first daughter, and we were living in a community that was beautiful and mixed race and just a community of people. But we were also next to one of the largest and last urban oil fields in Los Angeles. Yeah, yeah, that's a fun fact that you don't find out at the HOA. But with that, we changed our minds once we had our daughter. We didn't want to live in that environment, not because of the community, but because of the environment we were living in, and because our incomes prevented us from moving anywhere better. So with that, I just thinking about my daughter, thinking about her future, thinking about my lovely little mixed race baby, and how I wanted to instill in her the history and the richness of culture from both sides of her parents, but also worried about her future and what that would look like if we stayed there or if things didn't change. So with that, I went from finance bro to tree hugger. So I am with you. So we moved to Seattle. We changed jobs. I With the change of jobs, I no longer just focused on racial inequities, I also focused on environmental justice. So in my job, I'm able to focus on both aspects and feel like I'm doing my part, my little piece of the puzzle to move things along and make things better for her. So that, the thing that I focus on is the built environment, right? So when we think about the things that really just, exacerbate the greenhouse gases issue and climate change, we think about transportation and we think about the built environment. So estimates are somewhere around, even up to 40% as far as, building buildings and operating buildings and how big an impact that has. But when we think also about that being a huge source of pollution, it's also a huge source of opportunity, an opportunity to decarbonize our built environment. So if it says reboot is required, I don't have to do that now, right? Okay, great. So when we think about that built environment, we think about our homes, we think about the places where we work, we think about, the places where we have fun, with all of the buildings that we interact with on a daily basis. Even pyramids if they exist in Washington, which they may or may not. And the great thing about Washington is we're leading the country as far as building codes and energy codes, but then there's our existing housing stock and building stock and retrofitting that. So that's really where we see the biggest opportunity. So with that, now that we know the what, right? The built environment, the existing buildings, now we come to the who. So we think about the really skilled tradespeople, problem solvers that exist out there that are really moving the needle. So we think about the electricians and the plumbers and the HVAC and mechanical folks, the people doing remediation, those insulators, super important. I hear you, Alex, wherever you are. Air sealers, not sexy. This is the unsexy part, okay, people? But it's also important, right? It needs to come first before we ever size any kind of HVAC system to a building. And with that, the other part of the who is also the people that are doing the work. So oftentimes we think about the workforce, but I want to shift gears a little bit and also think about who owns those construction firms that are employing that workforce, right? So I'll give you a couple examples. So I use stock images for everything else, but these are real people. These are people that I know. These are people that have gone through our academy, have been through our programs, and have been able to grow. So first up, we have a minority and women-owned electrical firm. Woo! Her first hire was another woman, a woman electrician. Second picture up there, woman, LGBTQ-owned firm, also hired a woman for her electrical firm. Yes. Chris, my first gentleman up there, African-American owned HVAC firm, very rare, very, very rare. Also hired an African-American gentleman as his first hire. And then these two are actually, the last two photos are from the same group, Apex Electrical Group, now at 14 people and a diverse staff. So I won't even go into the numbers of those, but it grew from 4 when they first came to us to 14. So, and I mentioned those examples because I think that the pull and the work environment is just as important as the push and making sure we have enough workforce, right? We can push diverse people into the workforce, but in order to keep them, in order to retain them, we need welcoming, open, diverse environments for them to go into, right? So the more and larger and better and stronger minority and women-owned firms we have, the more diverse workplaces we have for that diverse workforce to go. Thank you. And I know this is my first calm slide, right? You've been a little spazzed out. But with this, so the thing I want to really drive home is that by helping businesses themselves, it has a huge ripple effect into the economy. Because I think of it as almost logarithmic in terms of its impact, right? So that first ripple is maybe you're a business owner, right? Establishing themselves, establishing their independence. One of my favorite contractors said, I got fired from plenty of jobs, even though I knew my stuff, even though I knew how to do everything. And I knew if I went into business myself, I wouldn't fire me. So just that independence, that ability to have their own job, establish their own job, right? That second ripple, that person, that business owner's family, having that stability of income. That third ripple, the people that they hire and their families. And then that fourth ripple, that local economy. Estimates are like 2 to 4 times of every dollar that you spend on a local business gets recirculated in the economy when you compare that to a national chain. So just thinking about that local small business and how that has that just global impact locally. Ooh. Oh, I like you guys. And then lastly, just kind of driving home the point even more, thinking about why it matters. So the other aspect is just having that Beyonce of HVAC, that Riri of electricity, right? Like you want those examples out there so that people can see themselves reflected in a future in these careers that are high paying, challenging, problem solving, highly skilled positions. The other thing is economic independence, having that ability to earn your own income, make your own way. And then I think minority and women-owned businesses and firms, diverse firms, are some of the best suited to make sure that all communities see the benefits of retrofits, see the benefits of energy efficiency. They may speak the language, they may be able to communicate things in a culturally appropriate way. How can we have more of those companies out there and available? And then wealth always trumps income. We talk about income gaps, but the wealth gap is even more disparaging. So, and with that, I think they're about to pull out the hook. But I would just say, in terms of things that we can do, we ourselves as individuals, as business owners, as people in government can contract with minority and women-owned businesses, can go out there and make sure we rate on Google and Yelp and whatever else is out there, and make sure we give the 5 stars and make sure we give the reviews, make sure we refer those contractors to other families and friends that we know and support them in any other way that we can. So thank you all.
Woo! Wow, that was good. I know there was an energy club hosted at Sustainable Connections a few months ago talking about the Clean Building Performance Standard and what that's going to mean for building owners and contractors and people who are the workforce that's going to be helping get these buildings into compliance. And I just think everything that Monica said just highlights how important it is to uplift Black and minority-owned, women and minority-owned businesses, especially in the trades. So thank you, Monica. So our final speaker tonight is Rose Lathrop. Yeah. You all know her. You're probably all here for her. Rose is our local green building and housing superstar. Rose does it all for Sustainable Connections. She is the program director for the Energy and Green Building team, the Towards Zero Waste team, and the Housing and Smart Growth team. She also holds the title of finance director. And she was our interim executive director for 6 months while Derek was away, and she made waves while doing so. She is a true leader, and we are so lucky to have her on stage tonight. I don't know if you guys noticed on your program, but one of our speakers was sick this morning and couldn't come, and Rose put together this presentation in 4 hours. She was literally our saving grace, and I personally am so happy that we get to hear from her tonight. Originally, I was a little bummed that Rose wasn't going to be on stage, and maybe you guys were too. So I'm glad that she gets to join us, and give a big, big, big round of applause for Rose, and we love her, and we're so excited. This is yours. This is for you, and you can
this
take
one?
this if you need it. Yeah,
This one, this one,
this one.
this one.
No, that one.
Okay. Okay, so I have practiced this. She said 4 hours, and that was not true. I had 2 meetings in those 4 hours, so it was really more like an hour and a half. And I have practiced this exactly 0 times. So watch out. Hold your hats. Oh boy, here we go. Okay, this is, I also wanted to title this the greenest ADU in history. And so, but you have to go through my whole housing story to get there. And not exactly 23 years ago, but about 23 years ago, I found myself in college, dating the sweetest man in the whole world, and pregnant. And you know, we had a little bit of money that we had saved, and we didn't know what we were gonna do. You know, one thing was I was like, had that nesting syndrome where I was like, we need a house. And so looked around, and the market was really hot. It was really hard to find anything. I actually called the wrong phone number in the Echo. I don't know if you guys remember the Echo. It was like the nickel pages. Called the wrong phone number, and they were gonna sell a house in a couple of months. And so we got in line, and we were able to buy this house. And it was a saving grace, right? This stability that I was able to provide for my daughter. And we were able to have the most epic parties. It was a gathering place where everyone knew that they could come back. People would leave town for 5 years, and they would drive by, and they'd be like, yep, Rose is still living there. And they would come over and hang out and just stop by. So all these children were friends and family, and they all were raised in this house and in this yard, and this house meant everything to me. I can't say enough about how important it is to have a home. So I am also the director of the Whatcom Housing Alliance, which is a program of our Housing and Smart Growth program. So if you haven't looked it up, check it out. We're doing a lot in terms of how can we create more housing opportunities for more people. And this is incredibly important as we think about how we build our buildings and make sure they're really green. We need more of them, and a lot more of them. So we're trying to figure out how we can solve this problem. And here's this idea where here I am, I have this stable home, I'm able to, like, in the best location. It was just amazing. And I certainly couldn't afford to downsize, because if you try to sell a house now, I couldn't afford to buy another one. And eventually, my daughter grew up, and then I became an empty nester. And that was like the most heartbreaking thing in the whole world, was to think about living by myself in this house. And it was 1,200 square feet, not huge, but it was 3 bedrooms, and more people could live in that house than just me. And I wanted more people around me. This is a situation where people are coming across this all the time. We have all of these empty bedrooms, and then we have people that are homeless and looking for homes. And we need to find opportunities where we can match those bedrooms with people. And I thought, I have a home that's more suited for more people, and I just need a little house. And I had this yard that had perfect space for an ADU. And I'm not alone. ADUs are so valuable for so many reasons, for so many people. Whether you're, aging and you don't need the big house anymore, maybe you need somebody to just kind of care for the yard, or whatever the reasons are. ADUs sometimes are touted as, a solution for solving the world's housing market crisis, and that's pretty overblown when we think about just this one tiny housing type. And it's going to be part of the solution, but it's not the end-all solution. But it's a social solution for a lot of people. So people that don't have enough money to move, they can't afford their mortgage anymore because property taxes have gone up. It's a social solution, and it's a great solution. And I'm happy to say that we are making changes around ADUs. And so this is a little side note, not as green building, but I have to frickin' say it. Before 2018, City of Bellingham, it was illegal to build a detached ADU. You couldn't do it. They didn't allow it. And I couldn't do anything. And then in 2018, people banded together, ADUs came in front of city council, and people demanded that we allow for this type of housing because it is a social solution, because it is affordable, because it creates homes for people. So here I am. I am loud and proud when it comes to passing this ADU ordinance, and we are stoked about it. And it's still, I gotta say, we passed it, and I was able to start thinking about how could I build an ADU. But the rules still sucked. You still had to do a lot of hoops to get through it, to try and build this, and I won't get into all the reasons why it sucked, but it did. And then ADUs came in front of Planning Commission and City Council again this last year. And we started squabbling over all these little minutia details. Should it be 800 square feet, or should it be 66% of the existing home? You know, all of these, is it 20 feet, is it 22 feet, all this stuff. And then the state said, hold my beer. And now we get to have 2 ADUs. And they get to be 1,000 square feet, and they get to be 25 feet tall. Yeah. So let's not squabble over the little details. Let's build homes for people. That's what I'm about. So when I started thinking about building an ADU, this was back before before the cool hold my beer moment. And I was thinking like, okay, I've got all these hoops I gotta jump through, and I started like, okay, I need to put my dream team together. And this, you people right here have been my inspiration. I've learned so much by sitting and watching and learning from all of you. It's been like the best life I've gotten to live is because of you all. And so when I had to put my dream team together, it was hard. I was gonna have hurt feelings. Sorry, Dan. But I also knew that I was going to be a high maintenance, a very high maintenance client, because I'm going to want it to be super sexy, and I'm going to want it to be super sustainable, and I'm going to want to do some of the labor myself, which everybody loves that. And I'm going to bring some reclaimed materials to the job. How do you feel about that? Oh, and by the way, I have no money. Nobody really loved this. Oh my God, I am so far. Okay, ripping through this. Okay, dream team. I first started and I was gonna build this very sustainable ADU in the backyard. Couldn't afford it. Next thing I came up with was, okay, I'm gonna build a garage with a yoga studio on top so that I could eventually build the ADU in the backyard. And then green building nerds happened. And so this is where things really took a turn. And if you haven't been to a Green Building Nerds, we have one coming up on October 25th. I am gonna blow this time, and I'm so sorry, but you guys are gonna have to sit through this. So then Green Building Nerds happened. And this is when I was able to create the greenest ADU that ever existed. And here we are, we have an architect shows up after we're having some beers. He invited his clients down, and they were gonna tear this house down. And I said, wait a minute, can I have it? And they said, yes. And this was right at the very beginning of COVID. This was February 17th was Green Building Nerds. And by June 22nd, it was on wheels headed to my house. So this is reuse in the most epic of fashions. And I have made a video, if you all want to see it cruising through town. It's pretty epic. Don't have time for that today. So, greenest house that ever existed. We did what we could to make sure that we insulated it really well. We sealed every possible corner. I'm going to give a shout out to Environmental Insulation, Instinct Builders, to Shannon Maris at Light Source Design. These are like my core team. And then I had a bunch of friends with a lot of ladders. I don't know what was happening there, but this picture cracked me up, and I had to share it. And we had to re-envision how things were going to be done, where we took the chimney down. And then I found somebody that was going to demolish their kitchen, and they let me buy their entire kitchen for $3,000, including all of the appliances and all of the cabinets. And then I built the sexiest garage on the planet. And this was my green building opus. This was my opportunity to do all of the things that is new construction that I couldn't do on the greenest ADU that it was ever built. And so this one, like Chris Trentwald with Chucking Up Builders, he had a couple of cedar trees fall on his property, and I thought, oh, well, I have a friend with a mill. We'll just mill those up and just make some siding. Well, that turns out is a lot of work. But we did it. We did exterior cork insulation. We did all of the sexy stuff. We got a heat pump in there, and my yoga studio is now home to, it's a home to yoga. We built this beautiful, once we put the siding on, we realized we couldn't put an ugly staircase, and so then we had to put the most beautiful staircase in the planet on there, and it really is just a garage, but it's so cool. And now this gets to be a place where we gather, where I have community. I have rented out the main house, and everyone that lives here contributes. People mow the lawns, people help weed, we make dinner for each other, we hug each other when we're sad, we hug each other when we're happy, we throw epic parties also, and my nephew's band came and played in my yard just a few weeks ago, and it was so sweet to have him and his not little, they're 21, they're adults, I mean maybe-ish, but it was wonderful to have them there. I was 21 when I bought this house, and he's here now playing in the yard when he's 21. I couldn't be more grateful for having this community and being able to build what I was able to build, because the rules were right, and some of them are wrong, but they're getting better, and the expertise that I've been able to gain from all of you. So we have an ADU design competition coming up. If you haven't already submitted your design of your favorite ADU, you can't submit mine, I know. But we encourage you to attend Housing Week. That's going to be October 18th through the, 16th through the 22nd. It's going to end with the ADU design competition celebration. Hotel Leo, it'll be lovely. There'll be appetizers and cocktails. You should come. We'll celebrate that ADUs are now legal, like super, super legal, which is awesome. And then I wanted to just reiterate how much I have to say thank you. I was at a leadership breakfast this morning, and Kathy Lehman or somebody said, leadership is an act of love. And you always hear me say it, but I love you all so much. You've given me just a lifetime of good times and learning and friendship, and I'm so happy that this gets to be my life with you all. So thank you to the community of nerds that have provided so much inspiration, to Sustainable Connections and to Derek for having a green building program 20 years ago when it was new and nobody was talking about it, and it gave me a platform and something to hold on to and learn. To the City Council for passing ADU policy that allows this to happen, and more so to the state for holding the beer. We are lucky, and I have blown my time by a lot, and I'm sorry to make you all stay longer, but thank you so much for coming to the Green Building Slam. This has been such a fun time, and I love having parties where all my best friends come, so this is great. Let's do it again next year.
Give it up for Rose.
Yeah, I feel very lucky to work with Rose and to learn from her and be in her presence every day at the office. It's quite a treat. Thank you for coming, and we can't wait to see you next year.